They're getting some breaking news in the investigation into the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie.
When federal investigators choose a single word, they choose it deliberately. The FBI did not say someone was contacted. They did not say approached or recruited. They said hired. That word carries weight in a federal investigation because it implies a transaction. It implies planning. It implies that someone needed specific information badly enough to pay for it, and that the person selling that information was not guessing. They knew. They had access. They were trusted. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old. She depends on daily heart medication to stay alive. She has been missing for more than 103 days. In all that time, not one confirmed proof of life moment has emerged. Not one. The ransom notes that appeared after her disappearance were not delivered to her family. They were sent to media outlets. Both deadlines came and went without contact, without demands being met, without any signal that Nancy was still breathing. Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos went on national television and said plainly that investigators believe this was a planned crime. Her home was not chosen randomly. It was selected, studied, and approached with inside knowledge that may have been purchased from someone within her circle of trust. That one sentence changes everything. Nancy spent the evening of January 31st at the home of her daughter Annie and son-in-law Tommaso Cioni. She was driven back to her house in the Catalina foothills around 9:48 that night. Security footage shows her garage door closing behind her at 9:50 p.m. She was alive. That is the last confirmed moment anyone can place her inside that home. 4 hours passed. Then at 1:47 in the morning, someone physically reached up and disconnected her doorbell camera. At 2:12 a.m., a motion sensor activated on the property. By 2:28 a.m., the Bluetooth signal between Nancy's pacemaker and her phone cut out completely. What followed was blood near the entrance, silence, and the disappearance of a woman who has not been seen since. Former FBI behavioral profiler Jim Clemente analyzed the timeline and stated the behavior does not match a professional kidnapping crew. Former FBI agent Greg Rogers said he never believed this was a burglary that spiraled out of control. Former Nassau County Lieutenant Michael Seltzer concluded that given Nancy's age and her dependence on heart medication, she likely did not survive more than a few days after she vanished. Meanwhile, the FBI was already moving. By February 4th, DNA samples recovered from inside the home were being processed at a private forensic lab in Florida. Investigators recovered additional footage. And then they did something that changed the entire shape of the investigation. They asked residents near Nancy's home to submit surveillance footage from 2 dates. January 11th and January 24th. Both dates fall weeks before Nancy disappeared on February 1st. The FBI has never publicly explained why those dates were chosen, but the implication is impossible to dismiss. Someone may have been watching the neighborhood before the crime ever took place. Studying routines. Identifying blind spots in camera coverage. Learning which home stayed dark at night and when Nancy was most likely to be alone. That is not impulsive behavior. That is reconnaissance. It is the kind of preparation that only makes sense if the target was already selected, which circles back to the question at the center of this investigation. Who told them which house to watch? Former FBI and CIA officer Tracy Walder stated publicly that this was not the kind of home someone randomly stumbles upon during a burglary. The Catalina foothills is a vast area of winding desert roads, isolated properties, and elderly residents living quietly behind gates and long driveways. A stranger does not select one specific woman, one specific home, and conduct weeks of surveillance unless someone explained why that house matters. Someone provided the layout, the camera positions, the routines, the vulnerabilities. Investigators believe that information may have been sold. That brings focus to a name that has received almost no mainstream attention. Dominic Evans. Evans is 48 years old, a 5th grade teacher in Tucson, and the co-founding drummer of a band called Early Black, formed in 2007 alongside Nancy Guthrie's son-in-law, Tommaso Cioni. That relationship lasted 17 years. Not a casual acquaintance. Not a few shared shows. 17 years of rehearsals, late nights, shared finances, travel, and constant communication. Over time, that kind of closeness creates something beyond friendship. Families become familiar. Routines become visible. Private details pass between people simply because they are always present. Evans told the New York Times that he first heard about Nancy's disappearance through Instagram and immediately reached out to Tommaso to offer support. He also said he had only met Nancy once, back in 2011, and had no close personal relationship with her. But that may not be the connection investigators are focused on. The relevant thread is not between Evans and Nancy directly. It is between Evans and Tommaso. Through that 17-year relationship, Evans could have absorbed details about the household, the family structure, Nancy's schedule, and the property itself. That kind of indirect access fits precisely with the profile the FBI appears to be describing. Public Pima County court records, cited by multiple investigative sources, reportedly show a criminal history connected to Evans that includes felony burglary, robbery, theft, embezzlement, and DUI charges. No law enforcement agency has publicly named him a suspect. Evans cooperated voluntarily with investigators, spent approximately 40 minutes speaking with FBI agents and Pima County detectives, stated he was home with his family the night Nancy disappeared, and according to him, was never contacted by law enforcement again afterward. Sheriff Nanos publicly defended him and called the online harassment surrounding his name horrible. This is not an accusation. That distinction matters, and it matters completely. But the documented patterns exist independently of any accusation. Felony burglary under Arizona law requires planning, timing, and deliberate movement through private space. Embezzlement is fundamentally different from most crimes because it only functions when someone first gives you legitimate access built on trust, and you quietly convert that trust into personal gain. That structure mirrors the exact concern at the heart of this investigation. The FBI believes someone with trusted access may have been paid for inside information. One version of that pattern appears in public court records. Another appears in an active federal case. They are not the same thing, but they reflect the same mechanism. Trust turned into opportunity. Nancy Guthrie was not a headline before February 1st. She was a mother, a grandmother, a woman who spent an ordinary Saturday evening with family and expected to wake up for church the next morning. She walked into her home at 9:50 p.m. and the world has not heard from her since. A dedicated FBI task force is still working this case full-time. Digital records, DNA evidence, phone data, and surveillance footage are still being examined. This is not a cold case. Investigators describe it as a narrowing circle. A tightening radius around whoever planned what happened that night. Somewhere inside the hours between Nancy's garage door closing and that disconnected camera, something was set in motion that investigators still have not fully explained. Someone knew the layout. Someone knew the cameras. Someone knew when she would be home and when she would be alone. And somewhere in the network of relationships, access, and trust that surrounded her quiet life in the Catalina foothills, investigators believe the answer is still waiting to be spoken aloud.